Hi, everyone. Welcome to Type Talks. Today we have dear Kristin with us, and we're here to talk about how it's like to date an ESFP from an ESFP's life experience herself. And so, yeah, what is some feedback that you've gotten from the people who have dated you about your demeanor? How do you come across to people?
I think me personally, I definitely, because I'm quite an extroverted person, I can come across, as very sort of party girl, like always wanting to be where the energy is, where my version of energy is, i.e., people, the fun, the entertainment, the hustle, the bustle. So I'm always interested in sort of being around that, and I'm often kind of the person who's initiating activities, initiating jokes. Um, I have had the feedback that I don't take life super seriously, which I mean, I definitely take life seriously. I have like a very rich interior world. I know exactly who I am and what I want out of life. At the same time, I think sort of on the day to day, I can come across like I don't take life seriously just because I'm always dominant SE. I'm just always looking to engage, entertain. I am making jokes like 90% of the time. It's either interacting in the physical world, making jokes entertaining, or like deep into some FI monologue. Like there's only two modes. Um, so yeah, definitely that's been a big thing, I think. And sometimes I've had the feeling, when people date and you've got some ESFP with like a more introverted type, sometimes I've got the feeling or the feedback that the expectation is that I will calm down over time, or like not be such a child, or like grow up, or things like that that I've heard from people before or after relationships, or just people in my life in general. And I think that's one thing that's probably could be challenging, I guess, about dating an ESFP, is that they are in that mode and they do thrive in that mode. And it would look different for everyone. For me, it is like literally the ESFP meme. It's like theater, it's entertaining, it's comedy, uh, it's going to parties. Um, but I think if you are going to date an ESFP, it's important to really let them thrive in that and really understand that that's not them like being problematic or seeking attention for attention's sake. Or I mean, that's not to say obviously we all have wounds and stuff that affect our behavior, but I think for ESFPs, they are probably the type who, even at their most healthy, are going to still be exhibiting, I guess, childlike behavior. You'll probably say the same for ENFPs, like EFPs in general, just so excited and optimistic about life. Like I know if I'm walking down a street, like it doesn't matter what kind of deep chat I'm in with someone. If I see, for instance, like a playground and it's got a big slide, or like one of those, we call them spider webs, that you climb to the top, I literally, that's so tempting to me. I'll just be like, I need to go climb that. And people in my life who understand me and know me will understand that that is something that I need to do, and I will do it. And they got to let me do that. Although I'm not saying like I don't have temperance. I can sometimes be like, okay, the stakes are high in this conversation. Don't climb the spider web today, Kristin. But the point is, people who have implied that that is something that over time needs to stop, or like calm down, or like leave my personality. Those people don't understand that that is always going to be a fundamental part of my personality. And as an ESFP, that's not a bad thing. And we each have gifts and stuff. And I think, the ESFP gifts are, I mean, you're always going to have like fun. I mean, maybe not always. If our FI rears up, it can be quite turbulent, which is another point. But most of the time we are going to want our partners, our friends, the people in our lives to be enjoying life and trying to bring them into that SE world with us.
Yeah, and so that point about ESFPs being an inner child and just seeing the world and kind of wanting to interact with it, if it sees a cool interaction point. So if it's like a really cool boulder, it's like, wow, that boulder looks really interactable. I might climb
Yeah,
it, or I might, if it's a
I've
really,
done that exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
if there's a really unusual, pretty flower that looks really nice, then maybe it
Stop it.
might be worth smelling. Yeah. And so You'll get some SE detours throughout the way, whatever looks interesting to do or fun to do, or wow, novel. This is interesting. I don't
Yeah.
know what to expect. Okay, let's try this.
Mhm.
And so you'll have someone who is bringing a lot of interesting experiences your way because the ESFP will have an urge to interact with what's around them. And they're also very fun and playful. So there is a sense of exuberance or aliveness with just interacting with the world in a way where they want to explore. They want to be able to have variety of experiences. Um,
Mhm.
and so Kristin also mentioned an element of sometimes appearing a little bit too much. And so this is something that ENFPs and ESFPs also deal with because of their childlike wonder or enthusiasm of life or just their excitability. With a partner who is not used to that, they might be like, wow, that's a lot or that's too much. That's common things they may hear because they approach life with such a zest
Mm.
and people just aren't ready for it yet because it's a lot of energy in a person.
I've definitely received feedback like that, and I must say the relationships, some of the like a few relationships that haven't worked out for me is because I couldn't stay in that relationship because I didn't feel I felt very, very stifled in my physical environment because I was told things like, "Oh, you are too," or "This behavior equals this pathological problem that you have." Or, I'm not saying that like I don't have pathological problems or whatever. What I'm saying is, a lot of the time, that exact thing would come out in my personality, what we're talking about here, and it would be perceived as something that it's not, or something unhealthy, or this idea that you can't be childlike and also healthy, which I disagree with, and why I think dating an ESFP certainly wouldn't be for everyone because it's a very particular thing that we need, which is a certain level of elevation and freedom in our physical world. And I understand why that would be hard for a lot of people to like hack in a relationship. But it's an extroverted perceiving function. So it's exploring function and it's with our sense data. So we really do need to be given that trust and that autonomy in that to explore a little bit. I'm not saying that we should do it in unhealthy ways, of course not. There are certainly very healthy ways to explore your sense data and feel free as an ESFP, get that energy, engage with the sense data, gather, explore, 100%. But I think, yeah, if you're going to date an ESFP, you need to understand, well, it's important for you to understand that about them and not assume that it's some like problematic pathological problem that they have because they need to sort of go and sort of frolic a bit in the sense data.
Yeah, they need it to be themselves. One of the gifts that you can give an ESFP is permission to be themselves. And so, Kristin, you mentioned the word FI turbulence, and I was wondering if you could go a little bit into that.
Yes. So I think having FI as our second function, it is the primary tool that we're using to make judgments and subconsciously those micro decisions day to day. We wouldn't even realize how much we do it, but everything that we do, naturally, we want to just use our personal own emotional feelings to engage with whatever is happening around us. So we're making the decision about how we interact with the sense data based on that. Anyone who's an FI user knows that FI can change like this. 1 minute you're like, I hate the world, I'm so cynical. And the next day, you have like a really good breakfast with your girlfriend and you're like, life is great. Then you suddenly feel like life is amazing. It's a really, really emotional roller coaster. It can go up and down and all different directions. And so I think if you are going to date an ESFP, ENFP probably would manifest in the same or different ways. One thing to understand is that we do really have a really deep, personal, rich interior life journey that's very much, it's FI. It's like I'm an individual in this world. I'm unique in some way. I need to be understood. And so to make it ESFP feel valued and loved and appreciated, we do appreciate, FI users in general would appreciate when the person takes interest in that interior life that we have, asks questions, tries to understand us through those questions. And on our end, this is something I've had to learn, we can sometimes feel like a relationship isn't a good one if someone doesn't just naturally know to ask us those questions, right? Because if you're not aware of type, you're not aware that you are different in that way. So you're like, why are they, like, I'm asking questions about them and to understand them. Why aren't they doing the same for me? And that's an expectation we have based on, you know, in relationship. I could go on a whole monologue about subconscious expectations in relationships. But I think, yeah, as FI users, it is also our responsibility to kind of extend grace and be like, no, people don't know to naturally ask these kinds of questions. And if this is a need that I have in this relationship, I should communicate it. But also just this idea of why even do we need to be understood in that way? Can we even, like, can we ever truly feel understood as FI users? Because one day I'll feel like I'm this person with this value and like this thing is really important to me. But then the next day it's like changed. FI can change so quickly. Like, as we said, it's an emotional roller coaster. So to expect that the other person is going to just understand and engage with our constant FI journey, which is a roller coaster, is a ridiculous expectation to have. And so I think as FI users, we should really understand that about ourselves. And FI is turbulent, and we can't be making decisions based on what we wake up and feel for the day. Like, really, because, you know, with FI, you could feel a different way in the next hour, in the next day, the next week, or whatever. So it's about as well, like, sort of having the discipline to sit with the decisions, having the willpower to sit with it, rather than sort of making calls on the ebbs and flows of those daily feelings. But from the other person's perspective, from the partner's perspective, it can seem like, yeah, we can be really emotional or moody or turbulent in that way. So that's why I think for FI users, it's important to understand that about ourselves and have healthy ways of, for me personally, it's been expressing my FI monologues, I guess, or whatever is going on in my FI journey for the day. Because as an ESFP, SE Dom, to process my FI, I usually have to like externalize it somehow into the world. So what I'll do is like talk to my sister or another trusted source, or I've got in the habit of leaving voice notes to myself to sort of get out the feeling and process it. And then most of the time when I've done that, the feeling's gone and it's fine. And it's just needed to be expressed, right? And I think as FI users, we can make a mistake of, instead of expressing it in a healthy way, we take it out on our partner. And that's not something that I would advise. Gosh, it can get messy, and it's not fair for the other person to expect that the other person is going to always know how to like cater to our FI.
Yeah. So with ESFPs, what people notice about them is their enthusiasm and their bubbliness or their social presentation. But what people comment less on, but is 100% there and real and strong and deep, is their rich internal world, which sometimes an ESFP might want people to know that about them because they get comments on how cool they are, how fun they are, but maybe they also want comments on the deeper parts of themselves too, their personality, their soul, because it's rich in there and too. With ESFPs, they can seem super close because they're having fun with people all the time. And so sometimes it's hard to know whether or not they actually like you or if they're just friendly with you too, because they can have that really outgoing side with them too. And so to bring it back to introverted feeling, they don't always show it. So when they're sad, sometimes you don't always know. Like if an ESFP were depressed in a relationship, sometimes people are like, this person looks kind of happy on the outside sometimes too, because they mask it pretty well with a happy demeanor because they don't want to bring the mood down for other people. They know what a good SE experience is, so they don't want to be the contributing factor to bringing down the mood. And so with their FI, it is very there and it's very real. They can care very deeply and they feel very deeply. And FI, oftentimes the feelings can fluctuate a lot too, because it depends on how they're feeling at that moment. So that could come up as they're a very beautifully spontaneous person. So they can really bring you on these magical journeys with them because of their whimsicalness through their feelings that change. You know, it can bring you into really interesting experiences where you're like, wow, this is a really cool experience. And this person brings a certain kind of energy that's very authentic. So like with Kristin's laugh, it's very authentic. When she laughs, it's like the prettiest laugh ever because it's so sincere. It comes from an FI authentic core. It's just this pure-hearted expression of who you are. I think when they're with someone who is, let's say, for example, a TP, who notices the emotional roller coastering, what they can see it as at its worst is overreact. So it may not actually be overreacting, they just don't know why it's happening. So it's like, oh, this reaction is coming seemingly out of nowhere, but it is coming from somewhere.
Mm.
They just don't know where it's coming from.
I can't even tell you how important it is for people to understand that the FI emotion that sporadically comes out of nowhere is very real. Like, it's very real. It may seem like we are overreacting, but it is the only thing that we know in that moment. It is the most important thing that we know in that moment, is when that FI feeling comes out. And so if you ever think that we are too emotional or overreacting or whatever, that's fair. That's fair if you think that. But what we need in that moment is, if you would like us to calm down, or if you want to understand us or listen to a more rational way of thinking, I would highly advise that you find a way to validate that emotional experience that we're having first. Validate means that you don't have to agree with it. You're just saying, like, I recognize that this is something you're going through, and that's fine. Like, you go through that. Like, that must be, like, whatever you need to say, like, that must be hard for you, or sorry, or whatever it is. That emotional experience you're going through is real, and I see that, and yeah, I'm sorry, or like, let me give you space for you to experience that feeling. And once we do that, once we feel validated in the feeling, we can actually just like calm down and think more rationally. And it's like one of the biggest tips I would give to like TPs specifically, or Ts in general who are with FI users.
Yeah. And sometimes FI doesn't know how to put it into words yet. So that's why you get the immediate reaction first, because FI can be languageless. So it's like, oh, how do I say this feeling? So that's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, but we also think as well, like, when that feeling hits, again, like, especially when we're younger and we don't understand ourselves, we think that whatever that feeling is, whatever the feeling is telling us, we believe that it's true. So in that moment, it's not just, I'm having a feeling that I can't explain. We sometimes don't even realize that it's an irrational feeling, right? Because feelings are irrational, sorry. But when we're in the feeling, it just feels like it's the only thing that exists. So we actually believe that it's true. Whatever it is that we're feeling is true in that moment, which is why if it's invalidated, it's even worse. So yeah, we just need to experience it, feel it. But as an FI user, we just absolutely have to learn to understand that about ourselves and have coping mechanisms and strategies for when those FI sort of moments hit. It's been such a journey for me of like learning to process feelings in a healthy way and not believe whatever narrative my brain is trying to tell me when I feel those feelings, because it's most of the time untrue. It's just based on a feeling.
Very well put, Kristin. You really articulated the experience of how it's like to date an ESFP, and also their cousin type ENFP very well too, because it's a similar experience. Yeah, this was beautiful. Your level of FI self-awareness of your own habits and of your life is really going to be beneficial to the people who stumble upon and watch this video.
Awesome.
Now they're going to know that they have to ask some deeper questions to the ESFPs in their life now.
So yeah, you want to make ESFPs feel loved, elevate them in their performance qualities, but then also ask them questions about their internal life. ENFPs as well, INFPs, ISFPs. We will feel so loved if you do that, like so loved. Yeah.
Yeah, so you heard it here. If you have an FP in your life, you can perhaps consider that. And so, thanks, Kristin, for being very lovely as both a person who's able to make people laugh, but also as a person who has a rich, vivid inner world that is able to remind people of the joy of what it means to be alive too, because the way that you interact with the world, it shows people that, yeah, you can make the most of it and then absorb and bask in all that the world has to offer by just engaging more with what's around you. So that's a huge message to the world in how to absorb more of the beauty that life has to offer. So thanks for reminding the world of another way to participate in beauty. And so I appreciate the value that you add to the type space. And thanks everyone for watching. And I hope that this was able to provide you more knowledge on how it's like to date an ESFP. And so I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.